Welcome everyone. I know we're running a bit off schedule, but we are very excited about this event today, which is happening in collaboration between Kingston Council and Kingston University Special Interest Group on Inclusion and Social Justice. My name is Dr. Paty Paliokosta. I lead this special interest group, and we always strive to bring people together and to activate change in all possible ways we can do. It's very multi-professional and includes different stakeholders. So we're very, very pleased when Kingston Council, and particularly our colleagues that are here, Marina Payen, Helen May, approached us and said, in the context of the Disability History Month, UK Disability History Month, and particularly a day that is an International Disability Day that is approaching, they suggested that we could host an amazing speaker to share some of the experiences with us, or not only just of disability, but of success. And that's why you will probably notice we have the pizzas here, some drinks. I hope you had the chance to take. Also, please go down and take, because for us it is a celebration. It is about the celebration of stories of people that have actually managed to, despite adverse conditions, managed to succeed and progress as individuals, but also support other people's success and make change. So I don't want to say too many things at this point. We also have a video that I want to share with you, because unfortunately the chief executive of Kingston Council wanted to introduce Souleyman, because our speaker, who I haven't introduced yet, I know, he wanted to personally introduce him. So he is doing that in a video, and then you will have a chance to talk to Souleyman Ba, who is an amazing motivational speaker, a Paralympian, gold medalist, and entrepreneur, who also is has a disability that he will talk to us about, and he will explain how he has balanced all this in his life and how he has found ways to move towards success through that. So we're very pleased you're here from different professions, and please try as we speak to, as Souleyman speaks and as we are reflecting together here, to think, how does this affect you? How you as professionals are part of this change? Or what kind of difficulties do you encounter when you are trying to provide the service for all? We have some questions that we have received from people, but also please be interactive. And Souleyman intends to give you a talk after he's introduced by Ian Thomas, and then we will have him here. We have him here to ask questions. So shoot questions to him, and hopefully this group will gain something today towards better outcomes for all. So.
Hi, welcome all. My name's Ian Thomas. I'm the Chief Executive of the Royal Borough of Kingston and the Senior Leadership Team sponsor for the Disability and Wellbeing Network, affectionately known as the Dawn Network. This today, the International Day of Disability, is part of our celebrations in UK Disability History Month. But for us, it's not just about a day or a month. We live and breathe inclusivity every single day. For us here in Kingston, living with disabilities is about celebrating living with disabilities. It's about supporting and nurturing the talent of people who live with a range, a panoply of disabilities every single day. So we want to continue to shine the light on inclusive practice, non-oppressive practice, on supporting people who are working with us and people who live in our communities. And I'm really looking forward to listening to Souleyman Ba again. He joined us a couple of years ago and wowed us with such an inspirational speech, Souleyman. So I've never forgotten that. You were amazing. I'm sure you'll do the same today, and I look forward to watching it on on the videos that we'll release later on, no doubt. So look, to students, to colleagues, members of this amazing Dawn network, have a brilliant day. Apologies I couldn't be with you again, but looking forward to catching up with you throughout the month to see how the whole month has gone. So thanks for listening and enjoy the day.
Without further ado,
thank you very much. Thank you.
Please welcome Souleyman.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm just going to set a 25-minute timer on my phone because I am known to talk too much and too long, so that will hopefully make sure we'll get out on time. I also have a few notes on my phone that I'll be referring to as I speak. But I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. Thank you so much for, even considering to, run an event like this, because it's really important to talk about disabilities. I think there's so many, social movements currently happening, whether it's ethnic minorities, whether it's disabilities, whether it's, to do with gender, whatever it is. Like, if somebody has a story, somebody has a narrative, and somebody is fighting something that they feel oppressed for. And it's important that we have, events like this to come together as a community and to hear everybody's side of the story and to hear everybody's lived experience, to then be able to go away and make changes in our individual day-to-day lives, because that's what it's about. It's not about making blanket statements that everybody lives by. It's about touching everybody individually and allowing them to adapt and cultivate their new perspective and that new learning they've now had, and to integrate that into their career or personal life. I have a few bullet points here, but I'll introduce myself quickly. So my name is Souleyman, and I'm 23 years old. I have a rare degenerative inherited eye condition called RP, retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. And it's a 1 in a million eye condition. And I think at the minute there's about 5 people in the UK who have it. And the funny thing about that is me and my sister both have the same eye condition. So it's extremely rare. And my family have somehow won the lottery with that. And essentially RP is you're born with it and you inherit it. And over time, it gets worse and worse. It's typically called tunnel vision because that's essentially what you see. So you only see a tunnel, almost like, literally like tunnel vision like this. And you have a lack of peripheral vision. So I can't see anything to my left, right, up, down. I can only see centrally. And the way the vision, the disability gets worse over time is it shrinks. So when I was younger, I had a bigger field of view and I could see, my hands on either side. But as I've gotten older, it's getting less and less, and eventually you go completely blind. So that's what's scary about that disability. You are told literally at the age of 5, you're sitting at the ophthalmologist, and they're saying you will go blind and this will happen, and good luck. And that's what they say to you. Feel free to laugh, like none of this is sad for me. But yeah, so, having that, being told that at such a young age is like, should have broke me and should break, has broken a lot of people. But I think for me, the reason why my story is so unique is because I flipped it and I've made a success out of it. The way my story began was I was born in a small country called Guinea, which is in the west of Africa. And, my family knew there was something wrong with my eyesight, but they weren't quite sure what it was. What is he just clumsy? Does he have blurred vision? Do we need to get him glasses? When I used to go out and play football with the rest of my friends, I always come back with head injuries, don't know why. And I remember my first day at school. I was 4 years old. I was going into, I think it was reception, and I had all my things, I was so excited. I had my uniform, I had my bag packed. I was so excited to go in and, have this thing called schools that I've been hearing about. And I went in and I sat down at the back of the classroom and I got all my things out. And the teacher started writing something on the chalkboard, which is what they were using still back in Guinea. And as the teacher was writing, I realized I couldn't see what was being written. I couldn't, I was trying to strain my eyes, I was trying to focus, but I just couldn't see it. It was blurry, it was far away. And I put my hand up and I said, sir, I can't see the board properly, I don't know why. And, it was Guinea, so he had an African accent. He said, okay, come to the front. So I got up and I moved to the front and I sat down and I looked at the board again and I still couldn't see it. And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble now. And I put my hand up again and I said, sir, I can't see the board. And he said, get out of my classroom, you are disrupting everybody. And, that was the result of me trying to express that I have a disability. And I went home and my mum said, how was your first day of school? Was it good? Like, did you have a great time? I said, yeah, it was amazing. I got kicked out. And that was my experience, my first experience of, discrimination, literally in the field of education, in a country where, understanding about disability doesn't exist, integration within education with the disability doesn't exist. And when you try to raise your voice and talk about it, you get shut down, you get told that you're misbehaving, and you get sent out of the classroom. And I visited Guinea about 5 years ago for the first time after moving here. And it was shocking what I saw. It was blind. The only profession blind people have in Guinea is to be beggars on the streets, and that's what I saw. Blind people with not even a proper white cane. They use, twigs that they've sticks that they've snapped off tree branches to maneuver, and they go from door to door, car to car, begging for money. And the reason why we moved here, because my parents made the decision that we want you to have an education, and clearly it's not going to happen in Guinea. And so, that's why we at the age of 5, we moved to the UK, and it was like moving to a new, planet. It was absolutely, crazy. Firstly, I got diagnosed with my eye condition. We initially moved to in Birmingham, and I went to Birmingham Eye Clinic, and they told me, this is what you've got, this is what it means, you're going to go blind, etc., etc. And then with that, I was able to have things in place in school, because I was able to have an EHCP certificate. I think it was called something different back then. Yes, a disability statement. And that allowed, then to say, okay, what does Souleyman need in order to, be a student, basically? Is it enlarged text? It's using a Word and being able to blow up all the text and make it bold, and have a teaching assistant sitting next to him and reading things out on the board, and as I say, enlarging and just being an extra pair of eyes for me to allow me to, access education. I've experienced discrimination in my own home country, and I've come over to a place where things are in place and things are set up to allow me and other people with visual impairments and disability to go ahead and, succeed in education. And that's the same kind of awareness I think that today is about. It's about raising awareness so we can spread this, and that's what we have Disability Awareness Month. It's to raise the awareness of disability so we can include this in different sectors of society as well. And I think for me, succeeding in education, I went to Holyfield School, which is in Surbiton, for secondary school when we moved to London, and that was incredible. And I heard a term, and I really, really like this term, and I might use it if you don't mind, intersectional activism. Because I had a lot of identity sort of issues growing up. It was like, okay, I'm black, I'm blind, I'm Muslim, I'm an immigrant, I'm a refugee, I come from a poor family. There's a lot of boxes that I fit in, and I don't know which one to advocate for the most. And that was very difficult. Identity crisis doesn't describe it. And that's why I like that word so much, intersectional activism, because you can be a voice and a unique voice and represent all those boxes at the same time. My friend Adam has attention deficit, and he says things how he is. From day one, he says, Souleyman, you're black and you're blind and you're fast, and that's why you're succeeding. And everyone used to be like, no, you can't say that, Adam. But at the end of the day, that's the truth of it, and that's what allowed me to be who I am. And sport was one of the things that allowed me to channel that frustration and channel sort of all the sort of things I was feeling at the time. And it also allowed me to integrate into society quite well. When I first moved from Guinea to England, it was football and basketball on the playground that allowed me to integrate and to communicate, to be able to find a voice, in the society that I've just found myself in, having to learn a new language, having to make new friends, essentially being a whole new country and trying to find a whole new identity. And I think that's what allowed me to be successful in sport. And it's quite interesting as well when you talk about disabilities in education. Initially, I wasn't allowed to, take part in sport in school. It was like, no, we can't do that because it's health and safety. You might hurt yourself, or it's quite risky. And it was through pushing and trying to do what I thought was right and what I wanted to do, and say, no, I do want to do this. I do want to run the 100-meter race for Sports Day. And having that back and forth conversation to allow me to do that, and proving those people wrong that said I couldn't do that, and having results, for example, going to that race, the 100-meter race, and not only winning the race, but, breaking the school record at the same time. And it shows like when you give opportunities and when those barriers are lowered, success can be achieved. And it's not about what you think they can achieve. It's about what space can you create to allow them to achieve. And that's what I found, certainly. It's not about having dogmatic, barriers, rules, and bullet points. It's about creating literally a safe space and a safe environment to make sure that individual, can thrive and can be, at the best. And the reason why I love the Paralympics so much, they took me in, they said, you have a visual impairment, therefore you are able to, do the Paralympics. You don't just have to run with sighted people. Because at the time I was running with sighted people, and not, I was also winning those national and regional races. And they said you can do this with other visually impaired people internationally. And that's how my Paralympic journey started. I was called up to represent Great Britain at the Junior Paralympics in Brazil in 2015, where I didn't know what the result was going to be, but I came away with a gold medal, my first international success. And as I say, from coming from a place where they said you couldn't, do sport because of your visual impairment, to now, being a gold medalist because of my visual impairment, just shows again, like how success can be achieved. And the discrimination I also saw in the business world. Coming from the success of my sport, I wanted to, have a business where I would go into schools and share my positive experience in sport. I saw the physical health benefits, the mental health benefits, the social benefits that it can provide for not just, people with disabilities, but, young people as a whole and as a society. I think we need more sport in schools, and I wanted to set up that business. And as I say, I faced the discrimination and the barriers where they said, I don't think you can run a business. I don't think you could even register a business on Companies House. I don't think you'll be able to do your taxes. I don't think you'll be able to go in. I don't like all these sort of things that I got from schools, from business mentors and people that you can't do this because of your disability. And it sparked something in me. And I said, well, okay, so, individuals with disabilities are always being told you can't do this and you can't do that because of X, Y, Z. And the Paralympics is incredible because it shows you can, sport is, I guess you could say, one of the most dangerous things you could do, especially, rugby, etc. But there are individuals in wheelchairs that are doing this. And it just shows like in some of the most forward, in some of the most riskiest areas of society, with implementation, integration, and a positive outlook, you can create a safe space to allow that to happen. And I wanted to see the same change in business. When you think about your mentors in business, you think about Lord Sugar, you think about Richard Branson, but I personally struggle to think of an individual that had a disability. Have we got any disabled business role models? There's not one that I can think of, off the back of my mind. So that, sort of subconscious society mindset hasn't been imprinted. Therefore, you aren't going to expect, and you might not allow an individual with disability to be in the boardroom because it's just not in your awareness. And so it's about starting a conversation and having that awareness to I guess, start the engine, towards that kind of reality. And so, some suggestions came in, and I decided to apply for The Apprentice, which is the biggest business show in, I guess, on TV, and going through the processes. And what we immediately realized was, not only do we not have disabled people in the, I guess, mass consciousness of business, we don't even have the things in place to allow them to start, to allow them to even be in the boardroom. Like, do the bosses understand how to deal with an individual with disability? Do they, do we have technology in place to even allow them to, succeed in the boardroom? Like, it was almost so archaic, and it was so, it just felt like I didn't belong. And the producers of the show realized we've never had to do this before, so the infrastructure isn't even in place to, so we literally had to build that from ground up to allow me to then subsequently be the first ever individual with a disability to be on the show. And again, that's kind of like an example of where a lack of awareness leads to unconscious discrimination, which then leads to a lack of participation in that area in society. But, as I say, the reason why I was able to achieve all these things, and the reason why I was able to push forward and question all those narratives that I was told initially, was because I'm vocal. And unfortunately, not everybody with a disability is vocal, and not everybody with this, visual impairment, knows what they need and what they want to strive for. However, I think what makes it easier is for us as individuals to show a level of compassion and show a level of awareness, and actually have it in our minds that it is possible for them to be able to do this and to achieve it. But the tone, I don't want to make the tone too negative or too sad, because the tone of today is about celebration, and it's about celebrating, achievement and success, and also celebrating the fact that we actually want to improve, and we want to move forward, and we want to be better as a society, because I think that's what we all want at the end of the day. We want a better life for ourselves, we want a better future for our children, and we want a better society, in case we ever have, not just even for ourselves, but for the individuals in our society that are, vulnerable and, are in diversity classes that may be subject to discrimination. As I say, like, I cross a lot of those boxes, and I've seen a lot of discrimination personally. Sorry, I'm just going to refer to my notes quickly, because I did run a lot of notes and I feel like I'm going to miss some of them. Yes, so there's a big point that I wanted to say today, which I don't think I've ever actually said. So it's the first thing I'm going to say at this point. I have faced more discrimination being disabled than I have being Black, because I can remember the times in which I've been discriminated being Black, but I can't remember the times in which I've been discriminated being disabled, because there are too many to remember. And so that's why it just, it's like it's a daily battle, and it's not just a one-to-one thing. It's not just a community to individual with a disability thing. It's something as small as, seeing something as small as like someone being able to open a newspaper and being able to read it and go about their day and jump on the tube, and I can't do that because that newspaper company hasn't thought about using bigger text fonts and bold fonts. It's about going into the shop and wanting a certain blend of coffee, that I enjoy, and not being able to read it because that coffee company hasn't thought about increasing the text and, allowing people, even elderly people that have glaucoma, to be able to read that. Because I think society has been made in a way where it's one shoe fits all, but unfortunately not everybody has the same shoe size. And especially, those of us that have, whether it's a visual impairment or a hearing impairment, we feel castrated and we feel, chastised and sort of, left aside. Like me, when I used to live in London, I moved away during lockdown. It was a daily struggle to go to the train station, because even though I had a blind, a cane, I have to say blind stick because people don't understand what a cane is. They think it's the thing that, older people use. A cane, a white cane, people don't get out of my way because they're too busy on their phones and they're lacking awareness. And you'd think someone with a guide or someone with a white cane, it should be so obvious that people would move out their way. Well, not unless they're checking their Instagram, And so, like I said, there are too many examples in which it's so unconscious at this point, and it's so automatic that it doesn't even register. Which is why, back to my point, I can remember the times I've experienced, racism, because I can count them on my hand, but I can't do that with disabilities because they're just so common that. I thought about an analogy to how you can actually approach it, and I call it it's almost like catching fish. If you want to go fishing, you want to go to a lake and you've got all your equipment, you can either do it in a frustrated way or in a calm way. And I think we want to move towards a society where we are cultivating compassion and empathy and we are opening up our awareness to, disabilities, invisible disabilities. That's what mine is, and I think that's why it's probably struggle more as an individual in a wheelchair, because you can't see my disability. However, it exists. Mental health is now a disability. For everybody in some sense or another has a disability. So it's not just about me, myself, and I. It's about every one of us. So how do we move towards a society, and integrate it in our professions to increase that awareness? And comparing it to catching fish is like, we want to do this, but we don't want to do it in a frustrated and frantic way. So when you go fishing, you might want to, you might have all the fishing rods, you'll have all the extensions, you'll have all the cool technology to be able to do this, and you're trying to aggressively catch this fish. You're chucking the line in, and you're trying to get it really far, and then you're yanking it, and you're getting really worked up, and you're getting really sweaty, and you're getting frustrated, you're not catching anything. Or you can go over there, it can be a nice summer's day, it's calm, there's a nice breeze, you've got a deck chair, you've got a flask, a hot cup of tea, and you're sitting there, you've put your line in, and you're just in a relaxed, composed state. And when you feel a tug, you know when to, sort of reel it in and catch your fish. And that's the kind of approach, I think would be best and most healthiest, to have a calm and composed approach towards it, and to learn one step at a time. And when we try to move towards change too quickly, we can become blinded by the mission we're working towards in the first place. And I guess an example of that is, with when we had all the BLM stuff, during lockdown, it's like we're too quick to try and correct ourselves and to educate ourselves, and to miss the point completely. And the way that relates to disability is that, in trying to, for example, understand blindness, we throw stereotypes onto it to make it digestible by the masses. So, for example, with the media, it's in a way brainwashed us to believe that if a blind person, they have to have sunglasses, or they have to have a cane or a dog, and that's the complete image. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to label everything too quickly. I think it's important to individualize it, and to understand that you're dealing with an individual. You're not dealing with a disability. I was able to vocalize the needs that I had, to allow it to be individualized for me in my education. I didn't learn Braille. I'm not completely blind. I'm visually impaired, so I didn't have to learn Braille. So that doesn't automatically mean that I learn Braille. So with the approaches that we try to implement, it's trying to, at the same time, push forward to make the change, but not to the point where we're creating labels and categories and boxes to fit everybody in, and understanding that it's an individual approach, and you're dealing with an individual, and to always be on the fence, almost like I don't, Humpty Dumpty. I know this is going to sound weird, but stick with me here. So Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. So this is you before you're approaching a disability. You're on the wall. You don't know. You don't have any judgments. You don't have any attachment. And as soon as you jump towards labeling someone's disability, or going to what the closest thing you know about it is, that's when Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, because now you've marked and you've labeled, you've do you know what I mean? You've given it an identity. Stay on the wall and approach the individual with a disability and understand it from their perspective, and don't be too quick to jump off the wall with the list of things you've learned to that disability. And to make it a little bit more positive, we are making the best change we've made, I'd say, in forever. And change is accelerating, and change is being felt, especially like the warm welcome I've had from Kingston University, the help I've had, from Kingston Council, from, literally sending a minibus to my school to be able to go to school safely, so I didn't get run over by buses, to, getting lessons to use a cane funded, to even the education support I had, to even charities like KSIL, Kingston Centre for Independent Living, funding, funding for me to be able to have training equipment, to Achieving for Children, who paid for my running spikes, because my family was so poor, like I literally couldn't even afford running shoes, to to other charities, that were able to help promote me and, talk about my vision impairment and the success I've had to try and improve the, motivation for other vision impaired people as well. So the change has been happening, the change has been felt, and the change is improving. But also it's about changing individual sort of consciousness now. We've had a lot of waves in society where it's on, you're hearing about it on TV, you're hearing about it on the radio, you're reading about it on paper, but now it's like our individual responsibility. But I want to talk about moving forward, and to, I guess, quantify what I'm trying to say here. It's about being passionate about what you're doing. Are you passionate about what you're doing? And do you believe in the change you're trying to make, as an individual? Not just because you're trying to tick a box, or not just because you're trying to look better in society, or not just because you want to fulfill a certain objective, but do you feel passionate? Apologies. Thank you. Do you feel passionate, and do you believe in the message? And secondly, it's about having a purpose. What is the purpose you're working towards? Is the purpose you're working towards to, just fulfill your career, or is it towards creating a better society? Is it towards, the next generation, and how much of a better future they're having? Is it towards improving the life of someone, that has a disability by improving, the sector you work in? So, what is the purpose you're doing it? And thirdly, the one that my coach always used to shout at me, it's about being persistent. Things don't happen overnight. Success doesn't happen overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. It's persistence that allows you to push forward and to believe that, that end goal is possible. It's not today, it's not tomorrow, but it's going to happen over time. And being persistent with that together and working together and communicating is going to allow us to do that. So, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to my talk. I hope, some of it went in, and, I hope we can share this with other people as well. We're going to answer some questions now, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Souleyman. I mean, you've said so many amazing things. I mean, the whole story, but the analogies as well are so fascinating. And really link up and resonate with a lot of work we're doing regarding the narrative of activism and trying to see how we can all together support others, develop empathy. So thank you so much. And also something you said before your talk, but also now, Souleyman said, if I speak to one person in this audience, I'm happy. And like you said, it's we sometimes think we are progressing, but change is still slow. We are all aware of that, and I think we have to be aware and to take small steps to make sure that we are actually working together. And I think what is amazing in the audience is that we have people from so many different enterprises, and you have your multiple identities, but we have people from finance, we have people from education, we have nurses, we have midwives, we have mental health nurses. So it's really good to kind of people who work actually in the council and constantly try to keep up with change and to create those conditions. So this is the chance for people to actually ask Souleyman further questions. I think you covered so many areas, but I'm sure people have something specific to ask. And also we've got some questions here that we'd like to follow up with you. So thank you again so much. It was so
100%. I think it's happened both ways, and I think both extremes are being magnified, both the ignorance and the change. I think, for example, with things like TikTok, you're seeing a lot more blind influencers sharing the message, and because everybody's indoors, they're consuming a lot more social media content. So individuals like myself are able to talk on platforms and actually get through to the mainstream instead of just our closed-in communities. But then also the flip end of that is almost like the pandemic has made people a bit more selfish as well. And so they're worrying about their own little, struggles and communities and forgetting that there's a bigger world out there. So I say both are being magnified, but at least the change is also happening, and I guess we're seeing it on our phones now. What achievement am I most proud of? I think it's easy to say sports or business or whatever, but I think for me it's to not give up on my disability and not to give up on life, because I think it's very easy to just say, okay, so that's my label now, so I'm going to be blind, so I might as well take it easy. And I think I've seen individuals that have done that, and it's sad because it's so easy and it's almost like a predetermined path. But I think for me, I said no to that and I pushed forward, and found, I don't know from where, but found some motivation. And that's what I'm proud of most, and I'm also proud of myself for, I guess, sharing my story and sharing my message. It's not easy, me being here. Like the first few times I started doing public speaking, I literally couldn't even get a word out because I couldn't breathe. And now I'm, sitting here talking in front of you. So I think that's my biggest, proudest achievement, not giving up on my disability and, having the push and the confidence to share my story.
Now, what's your current endeavors?
Yeah. So currently my endeavors are going into businesses and organizations such as yourself to raise awareness. So last week I was at an estate agents in London who, frequently get visually impaired viewings and clients, and they have no idea how to deal with individuals like this. How do you show a person around a flat if they're blind? For example, would be the audio description man you have on your TV. Tell them where everything is, what's the color, what's the size. So this is what I'm doing, going into organizations and saying, how can we implement and integrate education for disabilities, but specifically for me, visual impairment. So, everybody gets to hear about it. And
later on as a young person.
Yeah. The most important thing the teachers did for me is asking me, what do you need? And I really, really love that because they put the power back in my hands. I think there's a generation where some of older visually impaired people I've heard from is you almost get like a blind starter kit. You get like a blind typewriter, a braille typewriter, do you know what I mean? You get given stuff. And it's what if the individual isn't comfortable doing this? And I think the most important thing they said is, what do you need from us? That's the question I heard almost every week. What do you need? What are you struggling with? How can we improve this? Asking questions.
What kept you going and motivated you?
Yes, 100%. I think what kept me going was having goals and things that I was doing constantly. So whether it was with my sport, I think sport's very powerful because you always have a goal, you always have a target to beat, you always have a personal best you want to break. So having that goal really, really helped. And the time I struggled the most was during lockdown, where you couldn't have any goals and you couldn't make any meetings and you couldn't go anywhere. And then you kind of get faced with trying to motivate yourself to something as simple as doing the dishwasher, you know what I mean? And when you don't have big goals, it's hard to self-start yourself. So I think, up until lockdown, it was always having a goal and a mission, and now refinding that mission, which is to, as I say, increase awareness about visual impairments. I think businesses are working towards it, and it's brilliant because it's almost like every group of diversity we fight for all of them, and I think whether it was the BAME, before lockdown, and it's like when one starts being talked about, it's almost like a domino effect, and now we're getting to the disabilities where it's the hot topic, disabilities and employment. And, individuals like myself would come in and talk to an organization or a company and say, this is what we prefer, this is how we do it. This is, how we move forward, and the invitation is certainly happening. I wouldn't say we're at the end, but I'd say there's enough invitations being sent to have the discussion, and technology has helped a lot as well. As you say, with QR codes, you can then be able to have the access on your phone, and as I say, I've got things like the voice settings on my phone. I can zoom into things. So phones have been incredible, and technology has been incredible. So coupling the two, having the willingness to have the conversation in that business. There's so many businesses, I don't know if we'll even get to the end of them by the time the sun explodes, but having the introduction, having the conversation, how will it work? But I'm certainly noticing a change, yeah, 100%. I think the change is happening. I think you're doing it right now. I think, well done. Yes, having discussions, when you think about even with things like civil rights movements in America, like when they used to bring in, black leaders to have conversations in universities, like that's how things started, and that's how that generation of society gets to understand that, and then when they go into the, workplace, they can implement that in their individual positions. And universities, I think, are probably one of the most important places to have these conversations, and so, as I say, like you're doing that. I don't think it gets as I say earlier, prescribing things and going for it 100 miles an hour, saying, oh, have posters everywhere, because now you're getting, dogmatic about it. It's about individual people learning that, okay, there are such a things as invisible disabilities, there are such a things as visual impairments, which are different to blindness, and this is how they, tend to need help, and this is how they operate in society, and this is what I can do, and this is what I shouldn't do. And as I say, like, we only move forward when we have conversations and when we communicate. So communication in the best environment, which is here, and hopefully we can share some of the footage today on social media as well to project the voice and the message. But this, I wouldn't say, there's any more you can do. That then wouldn't be counteractive. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in fact, you spoke, Souleyman, about this quiet and patient, in a way, activism. And that really resonates with some of the work we're doing in the context of special interest group and with our student teachers. And it is about really developing gradually, through lesson planning, developing empathy to other children when they're still young. And as you say, at that time is what you received from people, from teachers, what they knew, what others knew about conditions and so on. So we are trying to develop this through a disability awareness resource we've co-created with student teachers. And my colleague here, also Nicola, and I, we joined a wider group in Europe, which was called All Means All, and we co-create there another resource, which is multimodal. Hopefully then also, it has videos, podcasts, different ways of accessing information. And if you look at the sign of it, it had all types of different, in a way, types of diversity, that are part also of the Equality Act and so on. I must say you've combined so many in one go when you were talking. But for that resource, we used narratives of people who were part of the disability rights movement agenda between the 1960s and the 1990s here in Kingston. Now, what we want to do now is to have more recent voices as well, and more people included and telling their stories. And I think today, it has been fascinating listening to you, Souleyman. And I think you might be willing to be included in this resource, as you've alluded earlier, and use some of the footage, maybe some of the podcasts, which would be so enriching, I think, for student teachers, which this actually addresses the resource, but also for the wider community. So I don't know, do you think stories like that would support empathy, and if this was happening when you were a child, would it have helped?
Yes, 100%. Do you mean the sharing of the media, or
the sharing of stories and the sharing of stories with other children, and being in a class and talking about these
100%.
issues and trying to be in other person's shoes, and because
100%.
Yeah,
100%. My work started with working in primary schools and going in and doing like mini Olympics days with them, and then having a Q&A. And I'd bring out all my medals, and then I'd bring out all my things that I use for being visually impaired, so my white cane, my talking calculator, and I let them play with it, and I let them understand from a young age, this is what it's like to be blind or visually impaired. And this is, for example, they'll say, oh, does your cane, is it like technology? Does it have like lights? Like what is it? Is it like a lightsaber? And they have so many misconceptions that they then take over to adulthood. But if you can tackle it at such a young age, they think that guide dogs can talk, and they think guide dogs know where the nearest Costa is. And do you know what I mean? Like, it sounds logical, but no, they don't do that. And that the only way you can educate is to share it, and using the power of the internet. Using it for good, and using it in a positive way, which is what it would do.
Absolutely, thank you. Exposure and using children's imagination as well, which is, as you know, it doesn't stop anywhere. So, unless anybody has any other questions, draw that to a close. And if you did you want to make a final comment or statement, Souleyman?
No, so I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
For being here and spending your time without giving up your time and sharing this with us today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you.